All right, so it seems for the time being that Canelo Alvarez is still ducking Jermall. Charlo picks the weakest link between 160 and 175 pounds to fight and do no matter, sometimes things change, but they just stay the same. Canelo Alvarez still seems hesitant to fight his contemporaries. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So Canelo Alvarez is looking like he is doing the same old thing he was doing with Dazn and Golden Boy, but he's just doing it without Golden Boy for the time being. And what that is ducking Jermall Charlo. I'm going to get into the details of the video, but I want you, before we get into it, to understand that one of the overriding principles that I have for this video and other videos that I've done today and I'm going to do in the future is the necessity, or pointing out the necessity, of fighters, no matter how good they are, of fighting their contemporaries, fighting people who are the same age, fighting people who turn pro around the same time, who developmentally are the same, who are around the same level developmentally. What you see a lot of times with, and what you're seeing, I believe, with guys like Teofimo Lopez, what you see with guys like, what you're seeing now with Canelo Alvarez, is that the powers that be in boxing pick one guy from a generation of fighters, right? And that's what I mean. The generation is the contemporaries, the people that turn pro are in the same age group, that the powers that be pick the person that they want to pick out of that group of fighters. They elevate him before the rest of the fighters and have that fighter fight older fighters, fight fighters that they can beat, and then claim that that fighter is the best of that generation without actually seeing these guys fight. And that is what has been happening between Canelo Alvarez and Jermall Charlo since they turned professional, and Jermall Charlo as well. Canelo Alvarez became the star first because he was the fresh face out of Mexico. He has a lot of fans in Mexico. And then so when they started saying, oh, look at this star coming out of Mexico, and they bring him to the United States, he signs with Golden Boy, he starts fighting on Mayweather Jr.'s undercards. Everybody gets excited with him. And then he gets some of the older fighters, right? Trout, he gets Landy Lara, he gets bunch of fights, right, that make him look, even though I think he lost that Lara fight. That was tough. And he's a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but those guys are not his contemporaries. And I believe that there is something significant about fighting guys the same age and the same generation as you, because they're developing at the same time as you. And different fighters develop at different stages. So that's the story with Jermall Charlo. The media, because of the fame and because of the potential, or the earning potential of Canelo Alvarez, decided he was the star and allowed the Jermall Charlos to work in his shadow. With all the fans of Jermall Charlo and Jermall Charlo who recognize that these guys are contemporaries, pointing out, hey man, these guys need to fight each other. They turn pro at the same time. They're the same age. They're in the same weight class. They're clearly the best fighters there. Why not have them fight? Why? Because the story has already been told. Canelo Alvarez is the greatest of that generation, and they're not going to have Canelo Alvarez fighting anybody to prove it or not. You also saw that with Roy Jones Jr. and Tarver. Nobody, the whole time, Antonio Tarver sitting there looking at Roy Jones Jr. thinking, I can beat this dude, I can beat this dude, I can beat this dude. I've been seeing him since the amateurs. I know his timing. I know what he's doing. I can beat this dude. And when he fights him, he beats him. But nobody would have thought that except for maybe both Roy Jones Jr. and Tarver, because they have been competing and seeing each other for years. Same thing with Jermall Charlo and Canelo Alvarez. But now that Canelo Alvarez is free from the zone, it seems like he's going to go back and fight more people that do not offer any real resistance to him. That being, in this case, Callum Smith. Callum Smith is the 168-pound champion, and I promise you, he is trash. Okay? He has 2 fights. He won his belt against George Groves. George Groves is not that good. George Groves, Liam Smith, Liam Walsh, Sam Eggington, whatever these do, get out of here. That is a lower level of fighter. Callum Smith is a flat-footed, come forward, jab straight, right hand, sit up tall type of fighter that Canelo Alvarez has seen before, and Canelo Alvarez will beat without a doubt. It is almost a complete and utter waste of time. That is just a belt being handed from Callum Smith to Canelo Alvarez. But the fact that he can beat Callum Smith at 168 says absolutely nothing about whether or not he can beat Jermall Charlo at 160. Jermall Charlo will knock Callum Smith's head complete 360 off his shit, will knock him out without a doubt. Callum Smith cannot beat Caleb Plant, another guy who is around the same age and the same generation as Canelo Alvarez is. But you pick the soft touch. Now, what I'm hoping is this. To be fair to Canelo, I'm hoping that what happened was Canelo said, let me out of this contract zone and I'll cut Oscar De La Hoya out and I'll fight on a fight-by-fight basis with you and I'll give you the Callum Smith fight. Just cut Oscar De La Hoya out, give me the money, give me the difference, and we'll be good to go. I'll fight Callum Smith. But then after that, move on to fight somebody that is a real risk, okay? And the real risk is Jermall Charlo. Or move up and go fight Arthur Beterbiev at 175, okay? So that to me seems like that's the choice of legitimate competition for Canelo Alvarez. Go to 160 and fight Jermall Charlo, or go to 175 and fight Arthur Beterbiev. If you can beat Beterbiev at 175, dog, you ain't got to tell me nothing. You ain't got to tell me nothing. I'll believe you right then. Pound for pound, number one guy in the world. But what did Bob Arum say about Arthur Beterbiev? Ain't no way Canelo Alvarez is fighting that guy. Not a chance he's fighting that guy at 175. That's why he's at 168. Callum Smith is a pushover. Billy Joe Saunders, all you got to do is get rid of his Nafraxaline or whatever he's using to juice to lose weight and forget him too. You know? But here's the thing, man. Just like Oscar De La Hoya, right? When Golden Boy was started, had so much hope for Golden Boy Promotions. It was going to be run by a boxer that understood what other boxers were going through. It was going to be run by a boxer that was going to make sure that everybody got the opportunities that they wanted, that they deserved, and it was just going to be the new guard of boxing. You remember that in the early 2000s? Golden Boy, I think it was Golden Boy East, Golden Boy West. It was a partnership between Bernard Hopkins and Shane Mosley and Oscar De La Hoya, some of the greatest fighters of that generation, and they partnered with Floyd Mayweather Jr., the greatest fighter of his generation. And what a change in boxing they were going to have. No. What the same old thing that we got before did we get out of Golden Boy Promotions? I know I didn't say that right. We got the same old thing out of Golden Boy because all it did was the fighter became the promoter. And once he became a promoter, he started thinking as a promoter. And when he started thinking as a promoter, he started thinking with his wallet, and he starts thinking, no, I need to get this 5 or 6 fights out of this guy before I put him in there with something risky. I need to make sure that I get my return on investment. And they start matchmaking. They start putting you in with guys. They start selling guys like Jaime Munguia as if he is some real fighter, right? Jaime Munguia is the next great thing. Jaime Munguia is garbage, okay? Jaime Munguia is garbage. Jaime Munguia is not going to beat any of the major 160-pound champions. He's not going to beat the 154. He's not going to beat any of the top 154-pounders. He was just a guy, a big Baby Huey type of dude out of Mexico that they thought that they could sell and create to become the next great guy by having him fight next to nobody. That's what Golden Boy becomes. That's when the fighter becomes the promoter, and that's what you see. Bob Arum at some point in time was a wide-eyed admirer of Muhammad Ali and was going to help Muhammad Ali become the greatest in the world and all of that stuff. You know, he was working with the Nation of Islam to create Top Rank, and that was going to be great. What happened? 40 years later, you got them treating Terrence Crawford the exact same way promoters were treating black fighters in the 1950s. This guy is the biggest selling guy, is the biggest name at Top Rank since Manny Pacquiao left, without a doubt, and they treat him like he's a burden on their channel. He's a burden to Top Rank. Your number one guy is a burden to you because you refuse to sell him. You refuse to give him the credit that is due because you want to hype job somebody else. That's the cycle we got to get out of. And I hope that we could get out of it by focusing on people fighting their contemporaries, right? Don't allow Teofimo Lopez to get away with not fighting Devin Haney and Gervonta Davis and everybody else just because he was the first one to get because he was the first one to get an opportunity. Now the door shuts behind him and everybody else has to grovel and praise King Teofimo, despite the fact that he ain't never beat anybody in his own generation. His own guys, the guys that all came up, right? But because he was with Top Rank and he has the promoter, all of that's not necessary. That's what happened to Canelo Alvarez for the majority of his career, and I'm hoping that he changes it by manning up and fighting Jermall Charlo. Can he beat Jermall Charlo? He has the ability to do it for sure. But will he? He has to actually do it in the ring. Not any of this, well, we already know how the outcome of the fight's going to be. No, we know what the Callum Smith outcome is going to be. We do not know what the Jermall Charlo's outcome is going to be or the Arthur Beterbiev outcome is going to be. Canelo needs to fight somebody. Anyway, that's my point. That's my viewpoint. You let me know your opinion in the comments section. Thank you guys so much for your support. And with that, I'm out. Peace.